Welcome to Tea with Tanya. I'm your host, Tanya Ambrose, an average millennial navigating life as a maternal health professional, nonprofit founder, and grad student. Join me in the tea tasting room where we spill the tea on finding balance and promoting positive living while doing it all. Hey, welcome back to another episode of Tea with Tanya. I'm your host, Tanya, and I'm happy to have you here joining me in the tea tasting room for another episode. I hope that you've been doing well. I know you're probably tired of hearing me say this, but I hope you've done something for yourself to show that you love yourself, to practice self care. Now, this thing doesn't have to be something where you spend money. It could simply be going to the beach, depending on which part in the world you are. It could be sitting on your couch in complete silence, putting your phone away and just taking that moment to truly be in tune with yourself. It could be getting your nails done, getting your hair done. It could be whatever, but I hope you're able to make the time to do something special for yourself or something that's going to help to bring about peace for you. Now, let's get into the tea of the week. Now, granted, the tea of the week, I got an actual tea that I'm drinking, and then I'm sharing a little bit of tea about myself as it relates to what I did recently. I did a colonic for the very first time. And let me tell you, I'm a whole new woman right now. You can't even tell me anything about anything. The world is probably just too small for me at this point in time. That's how that's how good I feel after getting the colonic done, which is also called colon hydrotherapy, which is pretty much where you go and you remove all the waste and toxins from your body. And let me tell you, I was literally, full of you know what. And I'm happy. I really do feel lighter. My stomach that I think I mentioned in the previous episode, my stomach that was truly looking like a almost ready to give birth woman, it has gone down drastically, and I am grateful for that. So since then, since getting the colonic, like I said, my stomach has went down. I've been eating clean and healthy. When my cycle comes around, my period is here. You know how that is. If you're a menstruator, you know when you're menstruating, you want every single thing there is to eat, the things that you're craving. But I will say I am proud of myself for not caving into the cravings while on my cycle. And I need to get back on my cycle syncing journey where I'm eating different foods based on the phase of my menstrual cycle. And I'll talk about that in another episode later down. But definitely need to get back into that. But I've just been feeling really good. I've been feeling light. I've been working out still. The pains and aches from the working out, they're subsiding. I somehow, some way have mental clarity. Let me tell you, the gut and the mind, they are interconnected, and I need to do more research on that because the way how I've been productive, I've been able to record episodes, I've been able to work on stuff for my doula business, I've been able to work on stuff for my website that will be launched coming soon. Remember, I told you guys that. So I've been able to do all these different things because I just have this level of clarity. Like the days where I would come home from work and feel extremely tired, I no longer feel tired. And even if I'm feeling slightly tired, because again, we're human, things happen, I somehow have the drive to push forward and get it done. It's just crazy. Let me tell you, it's crazy when you remove the toxins from your body, what essentially can happen. So if you've been thinking about getting a colonic done, I completely, fully support that. A hydrotherapy of the colon, let me tell you, it is I highly recommend that, honestly speaking. I do recommend that. So I've been on my clean eating and making sure I'm being more mindful of what I am putting into my body at this point in time. So that's exactly how I feel and what I'm doing. So sometimes we just need that motivation from something else to essentially get the ball rolling and to push us towards our goals and all the different things that we needed to get done. Because for me, I needed to get a lot of things done for business, for in general, and I just kept delaying, making excuses. And now I was able to accomplish at least half of what I was supposed to do just in the week of me doing that hydrotherapy colon cleanse. So love it for that. All right, now that I gave you that tea, let me tell you what tea I'm sipping on this week. And this week is not a solo episode. I'm going to be joined by a friend of mine, a licensed social worker slash co-worker slash friend, someone who I admire. And we're going to be chatting it up about so many different things. But this week's choice, we're drinking ginger tea because my guest today, she is a fan of ginger and she was in the mood for ginger tea. So that's what we're drinking today in the tea tasting room. So I'll give you a history of ginger tea. It has a long history dating back to China some 5,000 years ago, where it was initially traditionally used as a health tonic. And then it was introduced to Europe much later, originally as a culinary spice. And even in the Caribbean, we use that as a spice as well. And we have our ginger beer, which is like a juice mixed with a little bit of sugar and whatever. Please don't kill me, my Antiguans. I'm pretty sure I'm messing up this recipe right now. But we have our ginger beer. It's not beer, it's not alcoholic, but that's what we call it back in Antigua. We have the ginger tea. Sometimes we even boil ginger with garlic, but that'll be another episode talking about that. But yeah, so that's where ginger essentially was used for back in the day as a health tonic. And it's pretty healthy. It has many benefits. It helps to ease your digestive discomfort. And that's one of the reasons why I've been drinking ginger tea for as long as I know myself, because it's part of my culture. It's literally part of my personality at this point in time. So I can't get away from drinking tea at all, even if I tried. But it helps to ease digestive discomfort. It helps to soothe your digestive system issues. It also helps with to ease nausea as well. It acts as an anti-inflammatory. It helps to support healthy microbiome, especially when it is drunk as a tea. It may help to reduce your blood pressure. So if you're someone suffering from hypertension, it may help to reduce that as well. It may aid in weight loss. I have heard of people drinking a lot of ginger tea to help with weight loss. And one of my favorites is that it helps to ease headaches and migraines. And you guys know at this point in time, your girl is over here with is a chronic migrainer. So it definitely helps ease the headaches and migraines as well. And then it is rich in antioxidants, and it's pretty much suitable for many people. There may be some side effects such as bloating or heartburn. I haven't really personally experienced that. I do know that when it comes to drinking ginger, it's a little bit strong, so it can feel like a little burning sensation as you're drinking it, but it doesn't. I haven't experienced heartburn since I've been drinking that. So yeah, that's the tea of the week. Besides me getting my colonic, and then the tea of today that me and my guest is gonna be drinking is gonna be ginger tea, and you can add a little bit of lemon juice if you want fresh lemon juice, and then of course to sweeten it, you can add honey. Because one of the things that I'm not doing anymore is adding actual sugar. Because when I would use sugar, I would use brown sugar, but I've been incorporating honey now into my teas because I think I'm healthy. I know I'm healthy, but it's just a way. It's a healthier alternative for me. Before we get into today's episode, the affirmation of the week is I acknowledge and honor my limits. I acknowledge and honor my limits. And the reason why I chose this affirmation because today's episode, we're going to be talking about people pleasing. And that's something that I've struggled with. I still struggle to this day because like some lessons I'm just going to keep learning day in, day out. But I definitely have been working on acknowledging my limits and honoring it sometimes. Some days it's harder than some. But yes, so the affirmation of the week is I acknowledge and honor my limits. Now let's get into today's episode. All right, so hey Stephanie, welcome to the tea tasting room. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm happy you are joining me here. Because guys, let me tell you this before I let her tell us about herself a little bit. I asked Stephanie a few months ago to be a guest on my podcast. She'll tell us she's a social worker and she does great work in the community and everything. And I asked her to be on my podcast, and she politely declined
Absolutely.
and essentially recommended someone else
I did.
to be a guest on my podcast. But you guys know my life mantra. It is nothing happens before it's time. And randomly one day while we were talking, I kind of just slid the question in again, somewhere, somehow, very little, sneaky way. And she agreed, and she's here. So she's in the tea tasting room with us today, and we're going to be talking about people pleasing and personal growth. But before we get into all of that, Stephanie, tell the people a little bit about yourself.
Hello, I'm Stephanie. I am a licensed independent social worker. I've been doing social work since about 2018. I agree. I definitely did not want to speak. I am a social worker, but not a motivational speaker. So I want to make that clear. So yeah, I've been doing that. I normally work with substance use and in maternal and child health.
Yes. And I met Stephanie by way of my job, and we became quick friends. And now that's my girl. She can't get rid of me, no matter how much she tries. And what are you drinking today? I know we said ginger tea because you said that was going to be your tea while we record this podcast. So I already told them
Yes.
what the benefits of ginger tea is. Because Stephanie and I we are on similar journeys. We are on this health and wellness journey because we both have goals that we are trying to accomplish in that arena. Some days we fall off, some days we try to keep each other accountable because sometimes it happens. But sometimes I will say, sometimes I don't think we are we are good for each other because
Nope, not at all. Today is a not healthy day because I do have ginger tea, but I also have sugar in my tea.
I used honey today, so I'm feeling a little bit.
I actually did both, but
But we sometimes we fall off and we pick ourselves back up and we just try to keep each other accountable in some way, shape, or form. So yes, we try to keep each other accountable in the on the health and wellness journey across our boards. Like I say, sometimes we're not always perfect because I mean essentially no one is perfect, but it's always good. Like I would have mentioned in previous episodes, it's always good to have an accountability partner in some way, shape, or form. However that may look for you, because sometimes it doesn't have to mean I'm gonna come and like bark at you or do XYZ. It's just checking in to see the well being of that person. It could be mentally, emotionally. It could be, did you work out today or how was your workout? Or did you do 10 minutes of your workout? Did you take whatever pill you're supposed to take or whatever medication? These different things. And we do try to do that. So I'm happy she's in the tea tasting room with me today. And we are talking about people pleasing because what I've come to find out from my therapist, which when I think about it, when I really sit and think about it, I didn't need for her to tell me that I was a people pleaser. Because I can go back to when I was like 10, 11 in grade 5, grade 6 at Sunnyside School. Actually, you know what? Not that far back because I was a boss then. But when I got to high school, like, I was a boss. I'm not gonna say I wasn't a bully, but I was popular in primary school. I would say that. But when I got to high school or secondary school, a lot changed because you weren't in the same class with your friends from primary school, as we say, you guys say here, elementary school. So a lot would change. And I remember for me, like I'm saying, she told me I was a people pleaser. But I think for me, when I think back, I think I've always been a people pleaser because for me, growing up in Antigua, amazing. But I grew up, how should I say this? My dad is someone that's well known in Antigua, we'll put it that way. And in some communities they would coin the term, or we've coined the term nuff. That's NUFF. That means a person thinks that they're better than a person. But that was never the case with me. So someone would just see you and judge you and assume it because you come from this family or this background that you were essentially nuff, as we call it, or you thought that you were above most people. And that was not the case in my household, period. And that was not the case in general with me because I've had people who thought that I was quote unquote nuff. And then when they met me, oh, you're so down to earth, you're humble. I'm like, what else was I supposed to be? Like who, I don't know. So that was some people's perception of me. And I remember growing up, just essentially, I would say I would buy people's friendship. Like I was one of those people who would buy a friend. And when I say buy, I'm not necessarily meaning I'm physically using money. Sometimes that has been the case, to be honest. Mommy, if you're listening, please don't call me and tell me, oh, I knew, because I know you know. But I have bought friendships just not only with like money, even if I didn't have much money, but the idea of going against the grain or doing something that wasn't authentic to myself. And that has essentially put me in many holes, or I've dug myself in one hole deeper and deeper and deeper on many occasions where my siblings or close friends or even my parents essentially would have to end up bailing me out rather. So when my therapist told me that I'm a people pleaser based on the conversation that we were having, I was like, oh, okay. I said I wasn't even offended. I'm like, yeah, I could have figured that. I just couldn't put a term to it as it relates to being a people pleaser and setting boundaries. And right now, I feel like I'm still in that people pleasing phase to an extent, but just with a little bit more boundaries, or like the affirmation that I would have mentioned for today. I am learning to honor my limits, and even then, I'm still getting my feelings if I can't, let's say, fulfill somebody else's need. So I say all that to say, we're talking about people pleasing and the impact it can have on our personal growth. And I think for me, Stephanie, for a long period of time, I was stunting my growth by essentially putting myself and my needs on the back burner to please everyone else around me. I'm not even talking about immediate family, and that's the sucky part. I'm not even talking about my immediate family. I would essentially put them on the back burner too, to go please some outsider just for sometimes when I'm thinking about, I don't even know why, because I'm like, girl, really, be for real, like get it together. So that's kind of my introduction into, I guess, being a people pleaser. Because I think sometimes I mistake being nice and people pleasing. So I don't know. What's your take on that? Like, are you a people pleaser? Were you once a people pleaser? When did you realize you were even a small amount of people pleasing or something of the sort?
I think that I am on my journey to not being a people pleaser. I
Mm.
definitely went through that phase. And like you mentioned that you're kind of taking those steps now to get out of that, but still kind of there. I think just having that insight, I'm past that now where I have that insight. But so the way that I learned is any type of major change that you make, you will originally kind of swing the pendulum. So you might start off being a people pleaser. And then when you're actually trying to implement like boundaries, then you end up going on the opposite end and you become mean. Because remember, you said nice, right? So you become mean, but really it's about learning balance. So I'm still kind of learning what that balance looks like. I've gone past the mean and still trying to figure out kind of like what that middle looks like. But definitely history of people pleasing. It's interesting that you were talking about how, well, in childhood you were buying friendships, and it made me think about a specific time in middle school. I had a bully, and I remember taking money from my grandmother's bag to give her money because it was her birthday. And I know that, birthdays, you give money, da da da. So I don't know why I just
You a
didn't just
bully?
ask. Yes, my bully. And in my brain, it made me feel like, okay, she'll like me and we'll be, friends, because I guess I thought she was cool. I don't know. Her name's Erica if she's out there. And I thought that by doing that I would gain, I guess, a little bit of like from her. So in a way I
Uh-huh.
was kind of practicing those people pleasing skills then too. But I think the biggest direction that I've had to kind of navigate from that people pleasing for me would be family.
I think when you mentioned that situation with the money, I remember a scenario really quickly when we were at school in high school, and someone, I wasn't even sure if it was a close friend or someone, asked me for $1. And this is an example of how how much I was trying to, I don't want to say fit in, because it's not like I did not fit in, because I did, but at the same time I think I wanted to be liked. I wanted to be the fave. I wanted to be, oh, Tanya's XYZ for some weird reason. And I remember this person had asked me for $1, and I had about $3 or $4 in coins in my pocket, because in Antigua we have like actual dollar. The dollar is a coin, not the paper here in the US. And I remember giving the person $3, and then that same person told me, "Oh, you're just so enough," because I only asked for one, but I gave three.
Mm.
But the funny thing is why I did that, because, and I'm going to put my dad on the spot. He's the kind of person, like, if any one of my siblings would be like, "Daddy, I need $5 to buy XYZ," he would give us 10, or he would double it, or he would give us more. Daddy, I need $10, we'll get 20. Or Daddy, I need 20, he'll probably give 50 or whatever, just to make sure we have enough. Because he's of the mindset that we may just be asking for the exact, you want to leave room for error or something to happen. You just never know. And so that was kind of the mindset at such a young age I was operating from. Like, oh, she asking for $1. She probably need more than $1. What can $1 really do? That was my mindset. And this young lady told me that I was not for giving giving her $3. I was like, okay, well, what do I do?
Give it back.
But she didn't. Well, but she did not. But I was like, why was I being labeled not for giving you more when you could probably save the extra $2 to buy something? It was just so. I think with that, I don't know. I think sometimes I used money as well to, again, people please. So I do want to ask you, so that people who don't know what people pleasing is, like, what exactly is it, and why or how do we tend to fall into this pattern? Because I know we spoke about, you wanted the bully to be your friend. I said I wanted to fit in a sense, because, and people were labeling me as nuff or whatever the case may be. I didn't want to be that. So what is people pleasing, and why do we tend to fall into that pattern, you think?
So people pleasing is not like a psychological term per se, but it is a standard term that most people know or have heard of at least. And essentially it's used to describe people who have this strong urge to meet other people's needs, but it becomes problematic when they're doing it at the expense of their own needs. And so then
Mm.
you have kind of shifted from being nice or being helpful or humanitarian to being a people pleaser. Kind of like, where did it come from? Or,
Like yeah, like why do we tend to fall into that pattern just out of nowhere, essentially? I say nowhere because
yeah, I don't actually think it's from out of nowhere.
okay, well guys, so tell me, educate me. What do you think then?
So I think there's several different components that could lead to where it comes from. Because think about it, as children, when we are younger, it is developmentally appropriate for the child to want to please their parent, right?
Right.
That's just kind of innate in our nature to want everything to be calm, to be peaceful. And so we know that if we do the things that our parents requires of us, for the most part, we're going to have a peaceful atmosphere. So that kind of teaches us those beginning traits of people pleasing. Then as you get a little bit older, if some people experience trauma, people pleasing could also be the equivalent of fawning. So we always hear about like fight, flight, and freezing,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't talk about fawning a lot.
Ooh, tell me about that. 'Cause I don't think I've ever heard or can remember hearing that. What's that?
So if you're in a traumatic situation and people hear about fight, then you're thinking about, trying to get out of the situation aggressively, kind of matching energies, right? If you're in a trauma situation and you hear somebody flight, they're trying to get away. That might even look like saying, oh, I can't handle this right now, I'm going to step away. Either way, you just got to get out of the environment.
Right.
Freezing is when you get kind of stuck in the situation and you can't make a formal response because you're kind of overstimulated. And then fawning is kind of like a manipulation tactic that people will use without, like,
Hmm.
the intent is not necessarily to be manipulative, but it is because it's a way to escape a situation safely. So if somebody were to threaten you with a gun and say, if you don't do XYZ, and you go, okay, I'm going to go ahead and do this, and whatever you need, I got it, whatever it takes to survive. It's a survival mechanism, and it's fawning. And so you're not running away, you're not being aggressive, you're kind of meeting that person's need, and you're trying to make that person satisfied in order to kind of survive. So that's another way that people pleasing could become part of innate to like your behaviors. Of course, also, like you said, talking about trying to get that response from other people. You were saying you don't know why we want to be liked, but I think that's just human nature. As humans, we're just sociable people. So even if you're an introvert, like, the human connection is just necessary. They talk about babies who are born and don't have that stimulation. They can be clothed and fed and everything, but if they don't have that actual social human connection, then they'll die. It's called failure to thrive. So as humans, it's innate in us to socialize. So wanting to have people like you is just a survival mechanism again, of course. There's nothing wrong with that. It just becomes problematic when you're using it to your extent.
Right. Because when you think about it, do you think? Because growing up in the Caribbean or even in a black household, like sometimes you got to come home with X this grade. Maybe sometimes you have to go to school to study a particular profession. I know at least in Antigua, you had to either be a doctor, lawyer, teacher. Back then, that was always like the thing that they would push. Of course, now we have many different careers that we're all pursuing now. I don't care what mom and dad may say. We're gonna do what we got to do. Because sometimes they may say, "Oh, I'm not gonna pay your college tuition because you're not studying to become a lawyer, or you're not studying to become a doctor." So then we think about that. So I know, I don't want to say I know many people, but I know some people have gone into careers or they've gone to school to study something that their heart was not in because again, you had to please your quote unquote parents. Like I know for me, I remember when I first fell out of nursing school, my parents they were supportive. It was like a pick yourself back up again. We'll figure it out. But then when I remember when I made the switch to public health officially, I was nervous to have the conversation, especially with my mom, about no longer going to nursing school because she was like bragging, "Oh yeah, my daughter's nursing school." Her parents are, and
Mm-hmm.
she was just proud of that to have like one of her immediate offspring be doing something in the healthcare realm at that time because my sister went to law school and then it was me next. So I remember, so sometimes I often wonder if I developed, I don't think, because it never really made me feel like I had to fit in, but I wonder if I developed, because I'm just trying to figure out how me personally, you can walk me through, obviously you may not know the entire history, but for those listening, we just never know. Like you're here, living your life, you got everything you wanted growing up. In a sense that your parents work hard, if they have to work 15 million jobs to make sure that the lights were on and you were getting, the latest, whatever they could get. Why do you think we get to a point where we are, for instance, let's say we're going into debt just to please a friend or a significant other? Because again, you're going against your core values, you're going against how you were raised. Why do we go against our core values to put ourselves in some positions that are just not ideal. Like for some people, it could be going into debt, trying to, let's say, for instance, live a lifestyle. Like, you and I was talking about today, we see people on these trips like, oh, let me find out, let me get in. I want to be
Mm-hmm.
able to tour Europe without thinking about, got to pay a bill or we got to plan ahead of time, which I'm granted some of these people are probably planning ahead of time too. But there are people who would go, let's say, I'll use take out a loan or borrow money from somebody just to live a life that, again, it's not necessarily going against your core values, because obviously we have goals. We all want to travel the world. I mean, who does not want to travel the world? You know what I mean? But you're not in the position in life right now where you can just get up and say, hey, I'm going on a trip next week, next month, even 6 months down the line, because that's not where you are, maybe financially or just in general, right? But many of us will go against that situation just to please or prove that we can do something. So, like, why do we do these things? Because, like, for me, I don't know. Like, why do we do these things? I mean, obviously, you may not have the answer to why you guys listening, but to some extent, what push us there?
Well, the first question I wanted to kind of like consider is if the core values that you have are your core values or the core values you were taught.
Ooh.
Because if you are raised to believe this particular value system and not given the opportunity to kind of question your own beliefs and your own kind of values, then you may not actually know what your core values are. So you're going against something because quote unquote, you're not supposed to do XYZ, but there's apparently a part of you that's okay with certain parts of it. And so I think if we don't understand our own kind of needs and desires, then we can't really set expectations of other people. And so we're not even going to be able to defend our own values because we don't know what they are. And then there was something else you had asked about.
No, I'm saying, what if there are people who they will see, again, because we live in an age of social media. We can't run away from that. And sometimes I get a little bit annoyed at myself for having to even bring that up. But it's part of our lives. Like, you and I, we share TikToks. Like, me and my best friend, we be in the DMs. Because one thing about us, we're going to talk on many different platforms. We're going to talk on Instagram. We're going to talk on Twitter, TikTok, WhatsApp. It's going to be 4 different conversations across platforms. But
No, I get that.
But sometimes, even in conversation, when you're not even having a conversation, we'll say, "Oh, I saw it on TikTok." Or this TikTok said this. What TikTok said XYZ, which we know that there are valuable quote unquote lessons on TikTok. Because I mean, I just made a recipe for my dinner tonight that came from TikTok. Let's be for real. You know what I mean? But in the age of social media, where we are seeing these influencers doing all these different things, buying all these different clothes and XYZ, many of us or many people sometimes feel the need to live that life. And not because, for me, there's a difference between being inspired and then wanting to embody or take on exactly that, the role that the life that person is living. And I say that because in one of my therapy sessions that I had recently, I remember telling my therapist that I forgot what I was telling her, but I was telling her I'm the kind of person that I tend to move from A to Z. Like, I don't go through the stages of A, B, C, D. If I'm at A and I envision something, I need to get to Z immediately without doing all the steps in between. And that's something that I'm working on. I've come a long way, because let me tell you, that used to stress me out. But the other thing I remember telling her is that I was towing the line, or the waters was getting a little bit mucky when it came to being inspired by someone I may have seen on social media versus wanting to have that exact life that that person has without even knowing how they're even funding a particular lifestyle or how they're living or how their health is. You get what I'm saying? Like, instead of being inspired, many of us want to be that, be a person online. Like, I'm gonna use Beyonce because that's my girl. Like, somebody used to Beyonce and they would want to embody. They would try to talk like Beyonce. They think that they are the Beyonce, if that makes, or they think that they are the Michael Jackson of whatever. When he's like for instance, did you watch Swarm on
I did. Yes.
where I mean, she was a super fan and whatnot, but I'm using that as an example, guys. That's the closest thing I can think of as to how we want to be like someone. And I think for me, that oftentimes would tend to make me fall in may not be people pleasing in a sin, but it's trying to live a life that's not my authentic self. Does that make sense?
This is what I'm wondering. If you're people pleasing, I have two different lines of thoughts on this. Okay. So part of it, I'm thinking about people pleasing, and you're like, why are we doing this? Why are we trying to get the attention of the people? We have to just go ahead and acknowledge there's a benefit to people pleasing, right? So people will describe us as nice. People will describe us as reliable. We're considered that person that you can always count on. And we get a rush from that because it makes us feel good because we're told that's like the optimal human being, right? Because we're Jesus reincarnated, right? But we're getting, that release of dopamine as well. So again, it is almost a manipulative tactic because you're getting that same rush for yourself as well. So sometimes, let's say if somebody wanted to do something and you don't want them to do it, right? But you're going to do it anyways because you'll get the applaud for it. And you may not necessarily feel like, oh, I'm self-centered and want the applause, right? But still in the
Mm-hmm.
back of your mind, you're also recognizing that now they think of me as a better person and they know
Mm-hmm.
that I'm always going to be that go-to girl. And so now I have that title. But then the other thing I was thinking about is like influencers. I understand how people in general look up to influencers and they want to aspire to the kind of life they live, but to an extent, they're people pleasers as well because they're pleasing the audience. They're making sure that they, podcast, YouTube, Instagram, whatever, they're making content that's going to meet their viewers' desires and needs. It's not really focused on what they want. You see a lot of families, especially I watch like a lot of family TikToks.
Mm-hmm.
You see like a lot of family profiles where they're doing, oh, this spicy food challenge or whatever. That's probably not what those children want to do right now, but that's what gets the people coming in. And so in an extent, they're getting those views and they're getting that popularity and the benefits of all that, but in the form they're people pleasing as well. And I love true crime. And so
Yes.
I was watching a true crime today actually about influencer families and how there was a family with, I think, 4 or 5 children dancing on TikTok, and everyone was like, oh, they're just so wonderful. I want to aspire to be like them. But then she had 2 children that were never even pictured in the back,
You said tied up?
tied up, abusing them. They were never on
What?
camera. But all you saw was the 4 children who were on camera and their shiny lifestyle and their nice house.
Wow.
That's what people were aspiring to be, right? So again, that's people pleasing in their own way because she's doing that, getting that attention by looking like she has the perfect family, right? And looking
Mm-hmm.
like that family focused, just giving that family focused content. But really, I mean, her authentic self apparently didn't want to be a parent either, but she was stuck in that people pleasing trap as well.
Right. That's interesting. Wow.
I don't think that we're taught to know our authentic selves, truthfully. I think
Mm.
we're taught, like you were talking about when we go to school and we find careers that are the things that our family wants, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I know all that all too well because I have a whole undergraduate degree in biology. Never considered it, even as I was growing up, said, oh, I want to be a lawyer. But then it came time to go to school. Somehow I majored in biology. No clue as to why. Got a whole degree in biology so I could go to med school and be a doctor. And literally, science grades my entire life has always been average. Never had any interest in it. Where did this come from? And that was just because I didn't know what my own goals were. So my goals turned
Mm.
into what my parents' goals were for me.
No, I get that because, like I mentioned, even with my younger sister Chloe, she was, she was in school in Antigua. She came up here to go to, continue her college degree, and she wanted to become a doctor. But ever since she was a little girl, that was always her goal. Assuming, because again, when you grow up in a Caribbean household, there's certain professions that is, I don't want to use the word forced upon you, but it's expected. Then, like you just, it's innate at this point. You have to be a doctor, lawyer, teacher, whatever at this point in time. And I remember when she came up here and she was going to a community college first. And then it was myself and my best friend, shout out to Jarena. We were just talking to her and we were just like, you know what, girl, you need to go to Spelman, you need to go to HBCU, you need to go do biology, you need to do what you say you wanted to do. And she got into Spelman that year. Shout out to us. You know what? Like I said, me and Jarena, we're just we need our money at this point because we just be seeing things. But she got into Spelman and she went and she did biology, and I remember she got her B minus. It might have been a C plus in one of her classes, and this girl was. I don't want to say depressed, but she was just. And she at one point it became annoying to me and my sister. Like we would be in the car on our commute to and from school, and we get into arguments because it's just like, girl, it's one C. Like, what are you gonna do? Let's just go and get.
I was raised, C's are not good, so I feel her.
Yeah, but then the thing is, when you get a C or whatever in a class, it drops your GPA down. So I guess she was more concerned about that. So I'm saying, I said we can develop a plan for you to not one C out of all the time you've been the 4 years or however long you've been going to Spelman, that one C. And I remember seeing and talking to her, and her heart wasn't 100% in going to medical school. She started leaning towards public health again. Seeing, because again, our conversations that we can talk about, we'll gossip about somebody, then we'll talk about world news, and then we'll just get back to something public health related because that's how our conversations always go. Somehow we can't help ourselves. We call ourselves toxic for that because we be gossiping, and before you know it, we under some major world issue that's stressing about that arguing. But anyway, and I remember just talking to her, I said, Clay, follow your mind and just go and be, go and do your master's degree in public health or whatever. And then after you're done with that, you can see how you feel about going into medical school. And I remember she was just worried how she's gonna tell our parents that she no
Mm-hmm.
longer wants to go there. I'm like, girl, I said at this point, if they can accept me with all my issues as far as school and failing out the nursing school, I mean they can more than accept you and you're the brainchild at this point of the family. You know what I mean? And and I just remember seeing the relief, like the first time I've seen her shoulders relax in a long time because she was trying to please again her parents. Because at the end of the day, from since you were a little girl, you told yourself you were going to be a doctor, and then now that you started pivoting, because as you get older and you navigate life, you realize that there's more to it than just being a doctor. You can make an impact in the world outside of just being a doctor. Then you know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel like that kind of goes back to us being taught that we have options. So, I don't know necessarily how the Antiguan education system is, of course, but when thinking about it from the American perspective, you go to school, and growing up in a Black household by a grandmother also had the same, doctor, lawyer, got to be something,
Make the money to make the money.
right. But the thing is, I've always taken that experience and said, when I have children, I want to make sure that they are aware that there's actual other positions and jobs out there available.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like we're not given the opportunity to actually explore what those options are.
Mm-hmm.
And so finding out, again, like I said, our core values, or finding out what we want, because it's kind of presented to us, and it's like we're choosing the best of what's presented to us, but we're not really given the opportunity to see the full platter. So if somebody says, do you want hot dogs or hamburgers? Okay, you're going to pick from there, but you don't know that there's a whole steak in the back that you could have got because
Mm-hmm.
that was never presented to you.
Oh yeah, I see that. So then, my question is, how? Because at the beginning of the episode, I mentioned that when I started practicing or developing certain boundaries, when it came to people pleasing, that I saw a difference in my life health wise, and then I saw a difference in the things that I was able to achieve because I was setting boundaries when it came to certain people. Because I'm still out here people pleasing a tad bit low key. I'm not gonna even lie, but the main some of the main people who I had some serious people pleasing tendencies to, when I created or I made some boundaries towards them, I saw,
Their change.
yeah, I saw a change. Even my family essentially saw that, and those closest to me, oh, we see a change in you. And I used to get annoyed when I heard that, but I mean, I get, when you've seen me in the trenches and realizing that this girl is just, she's beyond reach at this point because she's not necessarily adhering to what we're trying to say or show her, and I've seen some personal growth. So, in your opinion, how do you think, or how does people pleasing hinder personal growth and prevent individuals from even reaching their full potential?
So I think that as far as your potential, if you're people pleasing and not able to know your authentic self, how do you know like the extent of what you can be?
Um,
If you're like, oh, I know I want to do something related to health, but that's it. And I know my parents are okay with medicine, being a doctor. So that's kind of
right.
like my only option, right? But if you don't know, okay, maybe I don't like blood. Maybe I want to be a researcher in
Um,
a lab, and that's also working in the healthcare. Maybe I want to be able to, like, I don't know, figure out the cure for cancer. That's just as impressive of a career as, being
mhm,
a doctor. But I think if you don't take the time to actually see what your needs are, what you want, what your skills are, what your strengths are, and how to kind of apply that, you'll never be able to kind of reach your optimal self because you don't know what optimal self is. And you can't set goals because you don't know what type of goals to kind of go for. The other thing is, I was talking about how it interferes with personal growth. Well, honestly, the most important or the most common effect as far as people pleasing that you have emotionally is that feeling of resentment.
mhm,
You continue to people please, you're not really benefiting anybody. You're not benefiting yourself. You're not benefiting the other people that you're actually people pleasing. If you consistently do something for somebody all the time because you're getting that positive response, you're really putting them at a disadvantage, especially if you think about it in like a close relationship. So if this is somebody that let's say your fiance, you are 100% people pleasing the fiance gets what fiance wants, and that's great. And I think there's nothing wrong with you tailoring to what their desires are, right?
Mhm.
But if you never say no, or you never say, well, here's another thing that I would prefer instead of doing this one thing, then how are they going to be able to return the favor, right? How can you
Right.
expect them to honor you the same way that you're honoring them? And then when you're resentful because, oh, he doesn't give me attention, or if my love language is touch, he's not giving me this touch. Well, you haven't taught him that that's something that you need.
Mhm.
And so then you've built up that resentment, but you've also put him at an imbalance, because how is he supposed to fulfill something that you have told him is okay not to fulfill?
Right.
And then not only that, as far as resentment, what if you have worked really hard to establish this career that your parents want, but you haven't really decided what your authentic self was? By the time you get to your career, and I mean, heaven forbid, but of course our parents are going to pass eventually. And at some point, if we're lucky, we're going to make it to our later stages in life. And then we get to our stages in life and we look back and we haven't done what we wanted to. Then we're resentful because we did what they wanted us to do.
Yeah.
So then you're resentful. And for me, like I was saying, I used to be a people pleaser to a big extent with family. It got to the point where people were taking advantage of me.
Mhm.
So, like, as far as, like, let's say childcare, I loved being around the kids, right? But it it was often kind of, okay, well, Stephanie's home, I'm gonna drop the kids off, and I just kind of would just end up with the children somehow, and I was just the babysitter. And even though I enjoyed it, it was also impossible for me to make plans because I also have two children with me that aren't mine, right? And
Mhm.
so I started to be resentful, and it started to spill out. And I remember telling the person whose children it was, I had my fill, my cup overflowed, I had nothing left, and I was just like, listen, y'all got to stop doing this. And they didn't take me seriously and thought I was just
Mhm.
having kind of a bad day because this was a
Mhm.
new boundary. It really wasn't even a boundary, because what was the boundary other than I don't want you to do this?
Right.
And so that just goes again with me having behaviors towards them, and it really just decreases the quality of your relationships as well, because
Mm.
internally you're not going to have that same satisfaction that they're having.
So does it decrease the relationship, the way the relationship could be on because of you, or is it because of them now not realizing that wow, oh, Stephanie's is creating a boundary, or they're not used to you saying no to them? So is it? I don't want to say whose fault it is, but so it's on us.
It's you,
Okay.
because you can't expect people to know, like, as far as I know, nobody around here can actually read minds.
I mean, hey. Okay.
We want them to, we wish they could, but until we've actually stated that this is our request or our requirement, how can we expect them to meet that expectation?
So then, how do we? And this is gonna come to like the next like, segment I want to talk about when it comes from breaking free from people pleasing. But how do we? Because I think that's what I struggle with in my people pleasing part of life. Because I want to set boundaries, and I've been working towards setting boundaries. But then I've also found myself feeling guilty, which I'm sure is a natural process as well. But then in the process of feeling guilty, I end up going against my word. That's the initial no that I said. I'm sitting there pondering, thinking in my quiet moment, like, wow, I actually said no. What if this person, in a sense, really needs me? Because sometimes I think I toe the line, and just, guys don't even judge me here, but I think I toe the line between. I know I'm very nice. I know I'm very giving. Like that's a fact. Like that's just who I am, regardless. I can't help it, and I'm sure you've seen that a little bit.
That's
But
good.
at the same time, as I'm thinking back to like the therapy session, is like, do I when I sometimes I want to feel needed. So if somebody's asking me essentially for a favor, for me to do some whatever it is, it doesn't even matter what the favor could just simply be to call somebody or whatever the favor is. And I don't have the capacity because what I've been learning is to ask people, do you have the capacity for me to come and spill my guts to you, or do you have the capacity for me to have this particular conversation? I'm not always good at it sometimes, but sometimes I try to read the room and be like, okay, yeah, they seem okay, but you just never know still. But
Mm-hmm.
something that I've been trying to do is to ask the person, do you have the capacity? Because I don't like when I don't want to say I don't like, because what I'm realizing is I'm able to compartmentalize my feelings or my priorities to accommodate someone else. Probably not may not be healthy, but I think when I'm saying no, then I'm feeling guilty. So part of me, like I feel like I'm just towing the line between people pleasing, like of course, and wanting to feeling needed. Does that make sense?
Yes, but
Like you want to say no, then you would have said no. And then for me, whenever I'm saying no, I gotta give you like a whole thesis as to why I'm saying no instead of just saying no. Period. So there's like a line between people pleasing, wanting to be nice, but also wanting to be needed. I don't know, like why is that? I mean, obviously, I don't know if you know why, but is that a real thing?
I mean, yes, that just kind of ties back into the manipulative part of people pleasing because you're trying to control the relationship and you're trying to control how they feel about you and you're trying to control their response.
That's so. I'm sorry, that sounds like me, honey. Like in some relationship. My teacher says, listening to this podcast, I'm still your girl, but sometimes, we all got something going on in our life sometimes. So I think, but I'm not manipulating. I'm just trying to control the outcome of the relationship. Is that what it is? Because I feel like you might be right. I feel like that's what it is.
That's manipulating it, though.
Oh God.
You're trying to control it. You're manipulating the relationship and you're trying to manipulate their response to your needs. So
Damn.
you're trying to literally get your needs met by controlling how they react. So I'm going to control how I react to make sure that they're pleased with how I act so that they can give me that fulfillment that I need.
I wasn't ready for that one. I'm not going to even lie to you. I was not ready for that one. But that's what it is.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing. That's how we get our needs met.
No, we got to find somebody to get on these, man. This ain't going to work.
Absolutely. Like if you're going to set a boundary, you have to be okay with setting the boundary and the guilt that you have that comes with saying no. Like if I'm going to say, no, I can't drive you to work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I might have the availability. I might have the gas money. I might have the time, but maybe I just don't want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to either accept whether my no is important or their needs are important. And then I'm deciding which one is the most important to me.
Mm.
And let's say maybe it's not even that I care about them getting a ride to where they need to get to, right? Maybe it's that I don't want them to be mad at me. So then you're prioritizing how you feel about their reaction to you over their need and over your need.
Oh, right.
And still self-fulfilling.
So say that part again. You say we're prioritizing.
You're prioritizing the feeling that you get from them being happy with you over literally the need that they have, which is the ride, and your need for rest.
No, I feel that.
You're disrespecting their needs by telling them, no, I can't give you a ride, or I can give you a ride. You're also disrespecting your own desire for rest, even though you have the availability. Like you were saying how when you ask people, do you have the capacity? I have changed my language when I call people, or if I text people to ask them, are they available to talk? I will be like, hey, are you available? But, I used to say, hey, are you busy? So I might not be busy, but that doesn't mean that I also want to talk either, right?
Right.
Or,
right.
hey, are you doing something? No, I'm not doing anything, but that doesn't mean that I also want to help you either. So I will say, are you available to talk on the phone or something like that? Like I'll express what my need is before. Just like if people say, I don't know if you've experienced this yet or not, but people will say, Stephanie, I need a favor. I'm not going to say yes until I know what the favor is.
See, I'll be saying yes. That's and that's sometimes that has.
And that's just that default politeness. That's what we're taught, but I'm not going to say it. I'm just going to sit there and stare at you and wait for the request.
No, but I've gotten to a point now because let me tell you, back in the day, someone said, "Can you do me a favor?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." Not even knowing the favor could be to commit a crime. I've already committed to doing that, but now I've gotten to the point where I am. It's one of two things: either you're going to tell me what the favor is right away, or I'm going to ask you what the favor is. But I feel like sometimes, and this could just be my petty side, if you need a favor, just come and tell me everything one time, and then I can decide. Because I'm not going to go back and forth asking you, "Oh, what's that favor?" And then we gotta dance around, let's get to the point. Because I'm a person, what I don't like is when someone, hey, how are you? When good and well, you're not necessarily as interested in how I'm genuinely doing. So sometimes
Right.
my response would be, do you want the surface level answer or do you really want to know how I am?
I like that though.
Yeah, because sometimes when I do it, I'm like, it's coming with a tone. Sometimes I can admit that because you can. Some people you just know what they're coming with. Instead of just get to the point, tell me, hey Tanya, X Y Z. Don't come and say how are you. Because if I'm going to really tell you how I am, there are instances where you're going to turn that how I'm truly am, you're going to turn it into something about yourself, or you're going to just give like a one word or one sentence answer when I gave you a whole thesis. So, so I just prefer sometimes if people just get straight to the point as it relates to that. But for like I said, I can relate because I've often agreed to doing a favor before knowing what the favor. And then the thing is, when it comes to, I think that can be another people pleasing thing trait is the person will tell you what that favor is, and then no, because you already said yes at the beginning, but you already said yes, so now you have absolutely no choice but to go put your head where your body can't pass to actually now do said favor. And I've been in that situation numerous times that it's just I can no longer subscribe to that part of my life anymore. So I am proud of myself for that, but it's just like, I can't. So I do want to switch a little bit, talking about breaking free, because we're trying to break free here, guys. The goal is to break free from people pleasing. And we all have, I'm pretty sure Stephanie can probably agree, we all have some sort of people pleasing tendencies.
Oh
And
yeah.
it doesn't mean that it's like it doesn't have to be a negative thing. I guess once you're establishing clear boundaries that you're not going to push back every time something comes up. So what are some ways, Stephanie, that you think we can break free, or break free from that cycle of people pleasing? Because sometimes I feel like the lines are blurred a little bit too much for me personally.
So I think the first thing that is probably the easiest thing that you could do, because I mean, granted, making change is hard. The easiest thing you can do is pause before you respond. So then you can actually give yourself time to think, am I actually answering this response, or just speaking to this person in a response to them, or in a way that I want to get a certain response back? If they say, hey, are you available? And I'm like, sure. I haven't taken that time to think, okay, am I
Mhm.
available? Sometimes, again, it's just kind of natural just to come on out and say, yeah, I'm available, or yeah, sure, I'll do that favor. But if you take that time to really think before you react, then you can question yourself and say, okay, is what I'm saying because I want to say it? Is this consistent with what I want in this moment? Or am I just continuing the conversation with the natural rhythms of like human interaction?
Mm. I like that one.
And you can also kind of decide, am I saying a response just to respond, just to hear myself talk? Am I responding because I want to make this person feel a certain way? Or am I responding because I'm being like in present and this is actually the answer to whatever the conversation is?
What are some ways we can break free from the cycle of people pleasing, or some steps that we can take to overcome people pleasing tendencies so we can start our personal growth? Because we're trying to grow, we're trying to excel, we're trying to elevate in life, but because we're caught knee deep in the people pleasing aspect of things that we don't often see, we don't have that mental clarity for ourselves. Because at the beginning of the episode, I mentioned, like when I was talking about the tea of the week, I spoke about I did a colonic recently that and since then, for some reason, I have this energy that I can never say I'm tired. Even when I'm tired, I'm still doing stuff. Like the other night, I had a really productive night. We both did. And because I guess sometimes she's my accountability partner, guys. So she would tell me when she's doing something. I don't want her to outdo me, so I gotta make sure I'm on my game. I'm just joking, but so that's how we sometimes keep each other accountable. Because like, if I'm seeing that she's doing something, and I know she's probably tired or had a day, and she's still pushing through, I'm gonna be motivated to do that. But I think I have this mental clarity now that I didn't have before. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to continue this journey, but I think there's still more steps that I can take,
Yeah.
and that you can even take, or those listening can even take, to overcome that people pleasing, because it can be a very blurry line. But
hmm
they got to be. I know you mentioned earlier about thinking before we react. That's one thing.
Then I was also thinking about like learning to validate yourself and not get that validation from other people and how they feel about you.
So how can we do that?
So you can start, I think earlier you mentioned about affirmations, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can start by affirming yourself. You could go to therapy and process where those thoughts of not wanting to validate yourself come from. Um, I think also understanding just kind of what it is you want, what you want your relationships to look like, what do you want your work life balance to look like. And then once you actually know kind of what your expectations are for life, then you can set boundaries that are consistent with that. Because you can't really set boundaries. I mean, you can set them, but they're not really going to be beneficial to you if they're not going to lead you towards a goal.
Mm-hmm.
Also, setting boundaries and being able to say no. I know when I first started setting boundaries with people pleasing, it's really uncomfortable to say no, right?
Sure
So
is.
if you don't want to say no, try negotiating it. So if someone says, "Hey, can you take me to work at 4 o'clock?" Okay, maybe I want to say no, but I don't want to go that far deep into saying no, right?
Uh-huh.
So I'll say, "Okay, well, I won't be available to take you to work on this day, but I can probably pick you up. Or
Mm.
if you can get to work a little bit later, I'll be available at this time." So you're still kind of saying yes, but you're also kind of learning what it's like to set a boundary
Uh-huh.
and be able to kind of affirm your own self and your own needs.
So what are some other ways we can set a boundary? Because for me, boundary setting when I first started doing that, it was very hard. Outside of the guilt, it was just I just didn't know a life of saying no, if that makes sense. I didn't know a life of not I didn't know a life of putting that's and this sounds so sad, but it's crazy. But I didn't know a life of not putting myself first then. In my adult life, because I mean, growing up, it was all about me, honey. I mean, I was raised to be kind and all that stuff. Don't get me wrong. I learned from example, learned from what was instilled in me. But I just did not know what it felt like or to actually put myself first. Now that I'm doing that, I'm legitimately living my best life. And it feels good, even with the little challenges here and there, because I mean, that's just life regardless. But
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what it was like to put my needs before someone else. And even then, when I was doing that, it was still hard because like my goodness, I'm putting me first. I'm so used to me being the last person.
Mm-hmm. And you feel selfish.
Yeah, and then that also would eat me up, and I'm like, girl, something got to give. So what are some ways in which we can practice or we can start for those listening? Somebody probably trying to set a boundary with a family member, a baby father, baby mom, whatever, a friend, coworker, a manager. What are some ways? I know you mentioned what we can start like negotiating, but what are some other ways we can do? We can start setting boundaries that are realistic, but also eliminate the guilt that we may feel if that's even a thing.
So I don't think that it's as easy as just setting a boundary and feeling good about it. Like the first thing you gotta do is be okay with not being okay with it. So
Really?
if you are gonna feel guilty about it, okay, that's fine. But be okay with feeling guilty about it. And then say, okay, I'm gonna experience this motion for 60 seconds, 90 seconds, and then I'm gonna move on. It's okay to feel guilty, and I accept,
I'm an overthinker, honey. I'm gonna be here probably till next week thinking about the same.
but that makes you a martyr. And
Explain that.
so you're basically taking, it's still in a way people pleasing because you went from doing what other people want to making yourself suffer for not doing what they want,
Mm-mm.
but it's still kind of serving that same role. It's like, if I'm not fulfilling this need to please these people and to do what they want, then I'm just not good.
Oh wow. Mm-mm. Okay, I heard you. Thank you.
It's cool if you like that though. But I also think that it's just really important to like know, okay, if I'm gonna be upset about something, why are you upset about it? Why do you feel guilty about it? Do you feel guilty about it because you were taught that if you don't help people, you're a bad person? Or like what is wrong with it?
The need to feel needed or wanting to be that reliable person for the other person because you've always been that person that they could rely on, but now you're having to establish these boundaries. Now you're probably not able to cope well with that. I don't know. I'm just assuming here.
So that's black or white thinking, which is a cognitive distortion.
Talk to us, honey. Tell us. Go ahead.
That's essentially saying that if it's not right, it's wrong. If this person's not good, they're bad. And there's no in between. But as humans, we operate on a spectrum. So, okay, yes, I have been this reliable person for this friend for however long. And who sets the definition that the one time that I can't meet their need, I'm no longer reliable?
See, is that Beyonce song when she said, the first time I said no, it's like I never said yes.
But the thing is, if you set boundaries, you're not responsible for how people react to them.
See, and that's my problem with that. Well, not necessarily a problem, but that used to be my mindset. Not right now, because at this point, it's just all about me. In a sense, I've established a deeper foundation when it comes to the boundaries. But yes, we can't control. And I think in the beginning, for me, I would again want to control what the outcome would be
Mm-hmm.
if I were to set my boundaries. I think I wanted to set the boundary, but still control
Their reaction.
the reaction, and you can't do that.
No, because you're still stuck in that manipulative cycle of trying to control everything. Literally. So set the boundary. I will mention the one thing I always tell people: if you don't have a consequence to the boundary, there's no point in setting a boundary.
Mm.
So if you say, okay, I'm going to say no to, I don't know, babysitting these children, right? What's the consequence if they bring them back over? Okay, well, I'm just not going to be there. Or, I mean, if we really want to go to far spectrum, I mean, I guess we're going to be calling the police to tell them you dropped your kids off because I'm not going to be here and you're not here. So, I mean, it could be anywhere on the spectrum.
Yeah.
But, I was, what are those things called? Those like, am I allowed to curse?
Yeah, girl, say whatever. It's just a tea tasting room, honey. Go ahead.
Well, they have those Am I the Asshole forums, and the girl was saying the whole family planned like a vacation, and they just didn't include her in the planning of the vacation because they wanted her to watch the children. And she wasn't like a stepchild or anything, like, not to say that's okay, but like she was just one in the same group of people. But I guess she was the one who always watched the children when they do things, so they just assume we're gonna go on this amazing trip. We can't take the children, so we're gonna leave them there. So nobody said anything to her until like the week before, and she was like, "Hey, you know what? I got the money. I just learned that y'all got this trip going on. Granted, I wasn't invited, but I have the money, I have the time, I can still go on this trip." Because, of course, they were like, well, we already started paying for it. She's like, I can still
Mm-hmm.
go on this trip. And they were like, yeah, well, we were going to have you watch the kids, da 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 da. And she was like, no, I'll just go on the trip with y'all. Y'all can use that money or whatever y'all was going to do to pay the babysitters to watch the children. And they just decided that they were going to show up that morning, essentially, to drop the kids off at the house and going on
Oh.
their trip.
Mm-hmm.
So she planned her own trip with the money she didn't spend on the trip they were not inviting her to,
Mm-hmm.
and left that morning. And they came, and there was nowhere to drop those children off at. And then they blamed her for ruining the family trip, right?
What?
They blamed her for ruining the family trip because she didn't meet their needs. She chose to set that boundary and to have that consequence, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if some of them had to cancel the trip because they couldn't go. Well, that sounds personal. That's not her responsibility, how they react, how they respond, how it impacted their life. She chose
Mm-hmm.
to go and have her vacation with her own family and with like her boyfriend, I think, and her children. And she went on, and they had the time of their life while they were still home, not able to go on the trip. So she set the consequence of that boundary, and they thought she was the devil, essentially. But that's because they weren't used to her setting those boundaries. They were
Yeah.
used to just saying she was the type of person where they were going to be like, all right, well, I guess I'll have to deal with it because, again, I'm a people pleaser, and I'm not going to say no. If I say no, there's no really recourse for it.
Yeah.
So having those consequences is important.
So then, do you think? I mean, like, why do we think sometimes that we can't have boundaries, even as people pleaser? Because I feel like you answered already, but like, why is it so hard to create?
I think because we want people to treat us the same way that we treat people.
Mm.
So we expect them to have that same energy towards us. So, like, yeah, I'll drop everything to do everything for you, but I'm kind of, even though you're not having that expectation because they've already showed you who they are, you're doing it with the intent of, as long as I'm giving this much of me, I'm expecting that if the time came, push come to shove, that you would also give that same to me.
Yeah.
Again, that's controlling that situation and that narrative. That's creating something that's not there. We're just basically creating these scenarios in our head about, I'm going to invest all of myself into all these people, and then in the end, I'll reap the reward. And I mean, in a biblical sense, we're kind of taught that too, right? The first will be
Mm-hmm.
last, and the last will be first, right? But that's heaven. That's not here.
That is real. That is real. That is so real. Well, Stephanie, I feel like you dragged me on my own podcast here in the tea tasting room. Not dragged me, but you open my eyes a little bit to some things that I have to work on, that I am working through in therapy as well. But I'm realizing that, what's that word you call that, manipulative? What is it? Trying to manipulate the outcome,
Control the narrative,
control the narrative.
fortune telling.
It's funny you said fortune telling, because in my we get ready to wrap up right now. But in my last therapy session, I was talking about something, and I remember I just gave a bunch of different outcomes. The event didn't even happen yet, and I was just telling the therapist every single thing as to the why is gonna go wrong. Not one time did I say I'm excited for XYZ or nothing positive. I told her all my thoughts were something negative, why I shouldn't do something. And she was like, that's negative fortune telling. I was like, well, I never knew that was a thing either. She said that is negative fortune telling because you're out here trying again to control the outcome. Then you're wanting to please a person in a situation by doing XYZ when why not just do it? Why not give yourself the chance to actually experience it or feel whatever the case may be before trying to find all these other negative things that could possibly happen?
You're literally like brainwashing yourself. It's like the scare tactic. I'm gonna scare myself into doing this thing. So you're like, okay, fortune telling, and you're imagining all these scenarios that could happen when realistically you could set a boundary and the person, yeah, they could cuss you out. Yeah, they could no longer ask you for your help. Or they could just be like, okay, cool, I'll find somebody else.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true.
We don't give them the opportunity
Yeah.
to do anything different than what we already expect and create in our head.
No, I feel that. I feel that for real. But before we go, what advice or encouragement do you have for our listeners who are currently struggling with people pleasing and yearning for personal growth? So you can just probably summarize basically what you were saying into however you see fit.
There is a quote that I love, and I've said it at work. I have it literally on my bathroom wall, and it says, "You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." And I think if we start actually focusing on that and understanding that we have needs, it's okay to validate our own feelings. It's okay to set boundaries. Then we'll be able to kind of fall into a life of authenticity and less of what we're taught and what I guess the world kind of expects of us.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. And on that note, we're going to end. But I do have a question to ask you, a question or two about yourself so our listeners can get to know you. But I definitely want to thank you for this amazing episode. Of course, it feels like one of our regular smuggler conversations that we essentially would have day in, day out. Because, guys, we can talk. But what does wellness mean to you and how do you prioritize it in your life?
I think wellness, for me, looking at it holistically, is everything from the physical nature. So the biopsychosocial whole realm of health. So
Mm-hmm.
making sure that I'm biologically where I need to be. My health is okay. I'm getting enough sleep. I'm taking care of working on it, my weight, doing all the things to take care of my physical needs. And then the psychological part, making sure that I have that space that I need if I need to recuperate emotionally, if I'm just socially tapped out, making sure that my anxiety is under control and I'm doing things that are going to promote peace. The social aspect, making sure that I'm socializing and I have a healthy balance of friends, making sure that I have community supporting me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then it's actually biopsychosocial spiritual. So for those who have a higher power, making sure that you are feeding into that spiritual fulfillment as well, whether that be church, yoga, meditation, whatever is congruent with what your needs are. So wellness is kind of just making sure to encompass all of that and meet all the needs. And sometimes you have to just pick one. Can't have all the struggles at one time. We got to prioritize. And so
Mm-hmm.
prioritizing what's the most important one for this moment, what's going to feed into what I need in this moment.
Oh, awesome. That's awesome. And then the next question is, last question. When was the last time you gave yourself a compliment or affirmed yourself?
In the last couple weeks, for sure. But I don't what it was. I don't know. I was thinking like specifically what it was. Apparently, it's what I needed in the moment because I was able to get over whatever the hump was.
Okay.
But I guess definitely in the last 2 weeks. But what that affirmation was, I don't know. I think it had a lot to do with recognizing my own needs. That's
Mm.
probably what it was
Okay.
last week
Well, at
when
least,
I was having those physical concerns and I
yeah,
was like, you know what? This is what I need. I need to not do this. I need to do this. And really affirming and validating that I know what I need for my own body and
yeah.
my own health.
I mean, hey, at least you gave yourself a compliment. And on that note, we are coming to a close. The tea tasting room is about to be closed. I do want to thank you, Stephanie, for finally agreeing to being a guest on Tea with Tanya. It is a privilege, it's an honor, and I appreciate you so much for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to come and talk to me. And I hope you guys listening enjoy this conversation and think about that last question. When was the last time you gave yourself a compliment? And if you're someone who identifies in a sense as a people pleaser, think about the different ways that we spoke about that you can create your boundaries and live a life so that you can grow. Because for me, when I had to establish these boundaries, I am now flourishing in life that I don't even know what to do with myself because at this point, I didn't know that there's the life on the other side of essentially not having boundaries, how beautiful it could be. Of course, with its challenges, but I just didn't realize that it could be that beautiful. So definitely, I hope you're able to take something away from this episode and apply it to your everyday life. And I shall see you guys back here in the tea tasting room next week. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of Tea with Tanya. If you like this episode, be sure to share it with a friend. Don't forget to follow on Instagram at Tea with Tanya Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the weekly Tea Talk newsletter. And of course, rate on Apple or Spotify and subscribe wherever you listen. See you next time. I love you for listening.